Yo! What's going on, everyone? Welcome to this week's episode of Walking 90. I'm your host, as always, Elliot Barr, and I'm slowly anticipating a home playoff game against a team that I have habitually hated all of my life, given the last 4 years. This team has stressed me out, but I'm ready for it. Also joining us on the show is my good man, as always, Chip, who slowly but had to come to terms with it. Union Omaha did everything right in the first half, but slowly died off in the second half. How you feel, Chip?
Eh,
Yeah, there you go.
kind
Hey,
of like
that's
Omaha
about right, man.
season. Eh,
Yeah, we'll talk more about that game. It was kind of interesting. And joining us, because Kyle Carr decided to go to Texas to go see his daddy and whatnot, is Mr. Ira Jersey, the OG, triple OG of
Yeah.
USL League One Fun. Which, by the way, if you did not know this, they still have a scheduled episode on the League One Fun YouTube page, which has been up there now for almost 2 years.
That's
And it
a
should
reunion episode, Elliot. Yeah,
There we go. There we go. It's the reunion episode. How are you doing, Ira?
I'm doing great. Great to be back. Watching a whole lot of League One the last 2 weeks. So looking forward to getting into it. And I have to admit, I wasn't able to watch much of the beginning of the season, but after the League Two season ended and a little bit of my time freed up, I was watching some Richmond, watching some Omaha. And it's nice to see a lot of the teams that I think helped make this league grow, both from the very beginning and also just dropping down or being an expansion team is just great, right? Like, so talking about Omaha losing, we'll get into that game obviously, but it was great to see them make the playoffs yet again, and Richmond at the top. Elliot, you got to be happy, and
I am happy. I am.
so.
I am excited. But man, I want to ask you this before we get into all the news and everything that's broken out, man. You've literally been covering this league since it started back in 2019. Like, what are some of the things that have surprised you the most in this 4 year growth of this league?
Yeah, so I guess one of the things that surprised me a little bit is I was initially expecting kind of all of the MLS reserve teams to move down into League One, or almost all of them anyway. Maybe not the Monarchs and New York Red Bulls too, but for most of the but for most of them to come down, because it made perfect sense for kind of the as a development platform for that to occur. But so the creation of MLS Next Pro, by the way, worst branding ever, hate it. Creating their own reserve league was a little bit of a surprise to me. But at the same time, I think it's really good for the growth of soccer, because it just still means that there's going to be more players who play at a professional level, and it opens up the idea that you're not going to be watching games in 4 o'clock on Friday afternoons up in Toronto, right? You're just not going to have that happen anymore.
Oh man, those were the days of the 4 o'clock kickoff
It
on
was
a
2 years
Friday.
ago. It wasn't. Those were the days. Jesus.
Those were the days, man.
last year.
Right. my playoff host last year rested on that 4 o'clock kickoff game.
I was skipping work to go watch us play at a field no one was at. We had more people at the watch party than were watching the game in person for Toronto to Union Omaha.
Yeah,
it's like by the airport, which I didn't realize too, which is like crazy.
No, it was a weird location. Guys, let's go ahead. Let's hop into it, man. We got a lot to talk about. Quarterfinal matchups happened. We had Tormenta taking on Charlotte Independence. We had Chattanooga versus Union Omaha. I say we start off with the Tormenta Charlotte Independence match, which, by the way, if you haven't seen it already, we kind of tweeted it out there. But apparently the supporters group of Charlotte SC has written quotations mark. We're still out there. Whether or not they have written up a petition and are trying to take legal action against the league and the referees because of apparent bad refereeing within this game.
First of all, welcome to League One.
How funny is this? And two, how silly is this?
Well, one, it's like, were you not watching League One all year?
No, they were too busy watching MLS, and then they realized, like, oh, USL League One will be the same.
Oh, we're in the playoffs. Let's go. But it's like, right. I don't know. And I don't know. We beat this to dead horse 1,000 times on this podcast. But again, does the reffing suck in this league? Yes. how do we solve it? Well, for VAR, it's like $24,000 a game. For goal line assistance, it's like $12,000 a game. We ain't doing that. Like, there are some options for the cameras and everything else, but the biggest thing, and this is the answer that no one wants to hear because it is boring and it takes a long time and we don't get to do it next week. We need to continue investing into refereeing so it becomes a full-time profession, and it's not like the supermarket manager from the next town over that's like the third official for USL 1 professional game. Because that's what it is right now. It's just people doing this in their spare time, probably making like $1,000 plus per diem. It needs to be a real job, and then you'll get quality and everything else with it.
It's probably less than that, number one, in terms of pay. And number two, I agree. And I think that the biggest thing that we don't realize about referees, and look, I'm a little bit of a referee apologist because I've been a referee myself for the better part of 30 years, is you think about these teams, right? These teams train 4 days a week, and then or maybe 5 days a week, and then play a game on the weekends. So they do their job 6 days a week. Referees actually only get to do their job 1 day a week. So if you think about it, right, it's not like you can do, maybe you do it 2 days a week, right? Maybe you have a midweek game and a weekend game, but you can't realistically do it more than that because, you can't run, right? Referees run as much as midfielders do. If you just look at the stats and just look at their biometric data. So it's not the kind of thing that you can learn overnight. And it takes a long time to become a good referee, and you have to, really think on your feet. It's very difficult. And so really what we need, and one of the ironies here is that the more games we have and the more games year round we have, the better referees will ultimately get, right? And it just takes it's going to take a lot of effort to do that.
Yeah, it will take a lot of effort, but it's just the jokes write themselves that a club whose owner is out there, some Ultras group decided to be just the same way. I'll let you write that joke yourself. Let's go ahead. Let's turn our attention to talking about this game, man. And I think this game pretty much displayed all the positives of Charlotte FC, Charlotte Independence, my bad. But at the same time showing all the negatives of Charlotte Independence. If you look at what the first 10 minutes, Charlotte looked to be on the front foot. Torrento really seemed to be caught up in like the playoff moment. It kind of seemed like they kind of got taken aback by it. But Overton, who we'll talk about it and his admission into the USL Team of the Year and whatnot, second team, but it had a wonderful strike in the 8th minute mark, really at the top of the box, coming down the right side. And this is for someone that's not that best of a defender, but I don't see any way how you can defend this outside of TJ Bush. Probably just got his footing wrong on this goal. What you guys think?
Well, I think one thing is that if you're defending a guy making a run like that, is you have to touch him and body him a little bit. Just make him. I'm not saying necessarily to be the last man and get a red card, especially in the 8th minute, right? That would kill your team. But at the same time, you just need to get in there and get a body on the player. I think everyone was so worried about. I don't remember who was making the recovery run, but someone was making the recovery run, and if that person had fouled him, he definitely would not have been the last man. It would have been a yellow card. You have to be a little bit tactical, and especially with a guy like that who's you can't knock over and over, right? He's like a massive dude. So.
The thing is, the way how he was running, it kind of just reminded me of someone like, I don't know if you guys, I'm pretty sure you guys have it, but you ever seen someone like do the spin arounds like on a bat and they're trying to run straight and they keep leaning to the side? That's what this just felt like, because he started off very safe, then he kind of just lean, and then he takes this shot that I'm pretty sure he'll never hit again out of 10 attempts, and it just happens to go in the back of the net. But in that moment, guys, like Charlotte's up 1-0. Did you guys kind of get that feeling like, oh, snap, like, Charlotte might actually do this?
Yeah, I remember I was standing in line for a slice of pizza before going into the watch party, and I saw that, and I was like, shit, because we all know it. I like Bolt. I like Tormenta. I think they're a great program. It's so nice to finally see them have success. And it's like, man, they're going to bungle this, aren't they? Because, like, when you give up a goal that early in the playoffs, like, it's not good. It really
especially
is
something like that where it's like an absolute like rocket of a strike.
Well, and again, too, it's like with the Charlotte team who's had a propensity this year for just going off for 5 goals. Like they're either really hot or they don't do anything. And it's like, oh no, this might be one of those games for Charlotte.
Yeah.
And it's like,
it really did feel like it. It really did feel like it because you had another strike from overtime at the top of the box that broke through the line. You had Kings for a shot, and with the 35th minute, that just barely misses the post, and you're like, all right, Charlotte keeps getting these chances, and Tormenta keep making these chances. While that's happening, like I said, like in the first half, you saw all the positives of Charlotte where the attack is fluid, the midfield is going, the defense isn't showing up the huge gaps. The goalkeeper's making the right saves and not giving up gaps. It just felt like nothing was going to turn its way. And then we go into halftime. And I don't know what happened. I don't know if Charlotte was just like, all right, we done enough. We're going to Richmond next weekend.
Well, I think actually, Elliot, that kind of started though partway through the first half, where Tormenta ended up with a lot of the ball. Like I don't know if Charlotte just said, "Here, you guys have the ball, try and break us down," but Charlotte is not that good of a team defensively, and the fact is they're not good against defensive teams usually. So I was like Chip, I was a little bit nervous for Tormenta here because I did think that. With Charlotte getting a goal, it's like, okay, they usually don't get goals against good defensive teams. Like you look at the teams that they didn't score against this year, and it's teams like Greenville, Omaha, Richmond, right? Those are the teams that they got shut out, and Tormenta is one of those teams too that is pretty, with Phelps and those guys in the back. They're a reasonably good defensive team, so I was nervous. But Tormenta had, even though they weren't goal dangerous a lot of the times, they were progressing the ball really well through the midfield and keeping a lot of possession in the second half of the first half. And I actually think it was just a matter of time before Tormenta was going to start taking some shots that they should have taken in the first half. And ultimately we know how it worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
But
it worked out really well for them because Sterling took a rocket of a shot and like started the second half barely out of halftime. This man was just like, all right, I got the ball in space. I'm just gonna take the shot and rips one right outside the box on the left hand side.
So Elliot, it was a good shot, but one of the things that created that shot was the switch, right? So remember you wound up the ball wound up gets switched to the right, then back to the left, and if you as that was occurring, the Charlotte defense then got pretty unorganized, and Sterling was able to find that little gap right in front of the D, and it was an awesome shot. But the fact is that someone had to close him down. And no one did. And because no one did, he just had all kinds of time to wind up and just strike that ball very sweetly.
Yeah, no, he did. And at that moment, I was like, all right, things are now balanced out. Now, like I said before, you saw all the positives of Charlotte. We also saw all the negatives of Charlotte when it comes defensively in this game because I got to say, after that shot from Sterling went in, I don't know what happened, man, but Charlotte just turned off. They turned off mentally, defensively. You started to see gaps open up. You started to see Kingsford and Sterling and Bill Hart get into the half spaces more easily. You started to see them able to play these 1-2s and just kind of have freedom a lot of the time. And I think probably the controversial moment independent supporters want to talk about is the controversial handball that happened in the 73rd minute. But in my opinion, it's not controversial at all. If you go up and look like you're about to swat a volleyball or a basketball in the air, we're calling this. Like we're not calling this.
Well, right. If you have to slow it down like it's the frickin' Subverter film to see it, like it's not like an obviously missed handball.
No.
Yeah, and those are one of those ones that are really difficult. And if memory serves, the referee did go over and check with the assistant on the near sideline, and the assistant, basically said, either he said I couldn't see it, or it was like no, it wasn't a handball. So it was one or the other.
Right, and it's one of those things where I hate to say it, like if you put yourself in that situation, is going to get called. Like you can't. It is just a mental lapse. It's just truly a mental lapse, you know.
What if they call it the other way? Then you have Tormenta fans complaining that it wasn't a handball, and so it's kind of like,
Right.
you put these refs in this situation where there is a no-win situation.
Right. And no win situation at all. And then, my fault. I totally forgot about it. The red card that happened from Charlotte FC.
I was about to say Sterling got taken down.
Right. But this literally comes. Look, we've seen this over and over time again from Charlotte, where they put so many numbers up top, like they put so many people forward that this Charlotte team really lacks from having a good number 6. I know Cease is a good midfielder, but he's not a number 6. You know, they truly lack like an offensive midfielder, and if they have that, this play doesn't happen because literally, like. Sterling blow past one Charlotte defender, and his name is escaping, but the guy that takes him down right in front of the box. Like it's pretty much like
Acosta. It was Acosta.
Yeah, Acosta.
Yeah.
If he doesn't take him down, Sterling goes. It'll go 1-on-1 with the goalkeeper, and he's not missing. All right?
Yeah, it's definitely a denial of an obvious goal scoring opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what makes this play happen, and I agree with you. If Charlotte had a decent 6 who was able to cut out passes. Dangler hits that ball to Acosta. It's got to be a 45-yard through ball right down the middle of the field. How was no one able to cut that out? It was just amazing, right? So either it was I have to watch it again. It's because it's been a couple of days since I watched it, but Dangler, I think he's a left center back, right, next to Phelps. Mm-hmm. When he hits that ball, I think it was just great vision from him just to know that Acosta was going to be making a run. That Sterling was going to be making a run, and Sterling just gets in between the two center backs, and the ball just meets him there perfectly. I don't know if that's something that they practiced, but it was a pretty impressive pass, and Sterling did a great job shielding the ball enough that Acosta had to take him down, or it was going to be a goal either way.
Yeah, and that's just the weird thing about Charlotte. We've talked about it a couple times on the pod that they're literally the all gas no brakes team.
Oh, yeah.
Like the top of their attack is like crazy. You have Oberton, who's played in the Premier League. You have Ibarra, who everyone thought was going to go up to MLS. You have Mbuyu, who is the biggest robbery of the award season. And then you have a bunch of like guys that's like, you can't even name their starting center back. Either of them, any of them.
No. The only difference
I can name Acosta only because he got
a red card. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, look at that. It's Clean Dimmick. And that's because I was really thinking like, oh, snap.
Mm-hmm. One, Tormenta's a very complete team, which is why they're so dangerous in this playoffs. They've got a really great balanced attack. They've got veteran defenders back there. And so they're hard to beat, especially when you have a Charlotte team who kind of lacks discipline, kind of lacks like cohesion. And, they got that red card. And after that, it was just kind of Tormenta's game, and they got the goal, and now they're playing Greenville.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what happened.
Definitely after the red card, just tactically, I just want to note, like, it was almost inevitable that Tormenta was going to score because it was pretty clear after the red card that Charlotte was just going to bunker and try and hit on the break. And, how many long balls did they try to hit and just kind of pray that one of their strikers was going to get onto it? It was basically a recipe for disaster for them because they gave up so much of the ball. And, when you get when you get a handball in the 73rd minute, is what it is.
Yeah, it is. It really is what it is because that is not Charlotte's MO. But I think also the funny thing about this was make League One unique was Charlotte almost had the cops pulled on them because they decided to bombard the ref. Yeah, that was kind of wow. But yeah, Charlotte's eliminated. Tormenta moves on, which means that the next game we're talking about, Chattanooga versus Union Omaha, winner will come to Richmond. And
hey guys, it's been great. I think I hear my baby crying. I'll talk to you guys later.
Chip, you cannot dip out because look, I know it's heartbreaking. I know it's sad. But Union Omaha played really well in this game, man. And it feels hard done. I will say this. Union Omaha, for the tips they had in the first half, they should have got a goal from it.
Mm. Yeah, so I think going in, a lot of us at St. Andrews were kind of talking about the game, and pretty much everybody was kind of in agreement that we probably should just play for extra time and see what happens. We've been pretty inept offensively. Our defense after the injuries to Nuhu and to Touche and DeBawa has been pretty depleted. So we were all really excited to see Nuhu in the lineup, and I think that's what gave a lot of Omaha fans a lot of hope. But with Nuhu back there, it's like if you have a guy who's you want to put the ball at the feet of, or in this case, hands of to win, on Omaha, like Nuhu's the best guy on the team by a lot. And it's like he's going to be the guy that can win you that game. And it's like if we can just get to extra time and score, our penalty kicks, like we're good. That's our best option. Which is why it was surprising how good we were offensively. And they almost made it. I mean, what was the 110th minute that they finally broke? I think it was right before. I have all my Tormenta stuff up. I don't have my Omaha stuff up. Hold on one second. Because they scored in the 101st minute. So like right before that break. And after that, it was like, shit. We were all outside, all having a good time. And after that goal, it was just a real big, like, wind out of the sails. Because especially in like that second half and the beginning of extra time, like we weren't doing a lot, which,
So,
and it's.
I have a question, Chip, and
Yeah.
you watch I only watched maybe half a dozen Omaha games during the regular season this year. Did it seems to me that you guys came out pressing, you guys were doing the Omaha press pretty effectively actually in the first half, and I agree with Elliot. Like we should have, if you guys had nicked a goal there, it obviously would have been a much different game. But do you think that pressing so much for the first 15, 20 minutes of the game, do you think that just wore the guys out, especially on a big field compared to where you guys play at home, right? Like playing in Chattanooga, I mean that field is significantly wider and it's harder to compress space, right? So when you press like Omaha tries to do, you try to compress space, and that allows other teams, if they're good enough, to do a big switch, and then of course you have to really book it in order to readjust your defensive shape. And I think it's really difficult to do that on a bigger field when you're not used to it. So I feel like that's why in particularly in extra time, you guys were just dead, right? They just weren't walking. You're on the road. It was not a great situation. So I almost feel like maybe you guys were saying, hey, just don't concede whatever you do, and we'll go to kicks from the mark and see what happens. But just it was unfortunate that you guys weren't able to get one early, because that really, I think, set you back quite a lot.
Well, I think that's
will also my fault. I will just add at this point as well. I think a thing that a lot of people might not have called on to is when Chattanooga made their changes, because right around the 60th minute mark they bring on Galindres and oh god, I can't remember his name, but they bring on two other players. And the way how Chattanooga was set up beforehand, Chattanooga was sitting back a lot. Like they were kind of like absorbing a lot of pressure because the way how Union was just once again doing that Union Omaha press of just like condensing the space, making everything very narrow, very direct. And when Chattanooga bring on Galindres and whatnot, and Teixeira and Galindres are two different forwards. Teixeira likes to come a lot into the half spaces, the one that try to collect the ball at his feet. Where Galindres is full blown, like I'm getting behind and I'm obliterating the space in front of me. And Chattanooga probably stepped on, I probably say like 10 feet, but that 10 feet, 10 yards. But that 10 yards, they shifted up and initiated their press. It truly took Union Omaha a while to try to figure it out.
And I think a lot of why they did what they did is because we have a lot of offensive guys that were on the bench, and a lot of them are like the same dude. So I think a lot of it was let's press, let's hope to get early, and if we want to keep pressing, we just sub out the entire starting lineup up front, which is what they did. So it was interesting. I think again, that's kind of how we've been scoring this year. There hasn't really been like an offensive identity since the beginning of the season. We kind of had the same thing. So like no Meza for Omaha this year was very similar to like Evan Conway in Omaha's first year in 2020, where he started off the season super hot, but then teams figured it out. They figured out this is the only dude that you guys have. we're gonna have 5 guys push him off into the corner, and then his only move is to do a cross field cross to get out of it and try to do something. And so they figured him out. And then we just didn't really have anybody else that panned out offensively. And so it was like, let's press, let's hope for chaos, and then just have our D back there to stop the counterattack. And it just didn't work. And that's kind of been how Omaha's been the last couple of games. So it's weird seeing them play the way they've played, especially because it's like they're doing what Omaha has done successfully in the past. They just aren't getting results just because they can't find a goal to save their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, it truly is. It feels like that. Like,
or the back line, they find a goal and the back line breaks.
yeah.
You know, they look like Wall Maria out there.
Right. And look, this is nothing to take away from Chattanooga, from all the jokes that we made on them last week. Like, Chattanooga played this game well.
Mm-hmm.
And this goal that they scored was, I gotta say, man, that's as soon as I saw, I can't remember the Union player's name, but he goes for the tackle on Mitz again. And as soon as he misses, I'm like, that's a goal.
Gabriel
Like,
Claudio.
even before he shot it, I was
Gabriel.
I was like, that's a goal. Like, just wow, he just missed it.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we want to talk, do you want to talk about the goal? We probably should, right? I mean, it's it was the winner. So, definitely, the Red Wolves definitely looked a lot better in extra time. I think even better than they did at the end of the second half, like the last 20 minutes. Like you mentioned, Elliot, about some of the substitutes. The substitutes came in, and I think it took them like 5 or 10 minutes to kind of get into the game. And then kind of by the time they got to extra time, they were kind of fully integrated into the game. Ruff is so good. I mean, Mensigan is a top tier player in this league, right?
He is.
He's up there, and obviously he's getting some of the accolades that he deserves. To move in the midfield like Mensigan does, you have to double team him sometimes, and I feel like Omaha just didn't have the legs at that point to be able to have the balance of their defense and just have someone covering for guys stepping to Rafa, and it was really really good, and then in extra time, the Red Wolves were able to pin Omaha back, and that's not how Omaha plays, right? Omaha plays more open and tries to, doesn't want the ball, and being able to pin Omaha back, I think was actually it was a good both tactical and strategic plan going into extra time by the Red Wolves, and they executed pretty well. So although that being said, there was so much stoppage time that should have been added that wasn't too in the second half, in the second extra time, because how many
minutes.
So I mean, I don't know if it was 10, but it should have been more than 5. Right? So Omaha did have a few chances at the end, right? It's not that you guys didn't give it a go either, Chip, right? Everyone was 3 or 4 chances right at the end, but the Red Wolves just bunkered and just couldn't break down 10 guys in the box basically.
Yeah, it just really felt like a Union Omaha team that really probably mid-August just kind of just seemed to be going at it about a flat wheel. They tried to get up for this game. Granted, it was probably the better game of the two on the weekend that I enjoyed. But yeah, it just felt like you said, our near the 9 minutes, they just couldn't muster enough up energy to keep it going. So,
well, that's the crazy thing about it too, is at least like in 2020, which we can make all the asterisk jokes we want, yada yada yada, but obviously like that Omaha team had some work to do in 2020 if they wanted to beat Greenville. But we knew what they had to do. They had to find a guy or two that could score.
Yeah,
and they did. They found Hurst, and Hurst opened up Conway, and that just opened up the entire offense for Omaha and made them the juggernaut that they were in 2021. I mean, what does Omaha need this year? Well, we need a center back. We need a right back. We need another center back. We need left wing. We need a right wing. We need 2 strikers. It's like it's a laundry list of things. And it's like, even if these guys are under contract still, you're going to have to make some tough choices as a front office because there's a lot of rebuilding to do, and it's not as simple of a rebuild as it was from like 20 into 2021. And so it'll be interesting to see what Jay does because there's some talent on this team, but there's definitely areas that need to find improvement, whether that's through player growth in the offseason or through new signings.
Yeah, it really feels like a Union Alma team that's kind of coming to the end of a cycle. It's kind of like that rebirth of it. If Jay Mims is still there next year or not, we'll see.
You think that that's a real possibility? I mean, he's done great with the team so far. I mean, he
I
still
no,
made
no,
the
no, no. And I'm not saying it
still
in
made the
terms of him
playoffs.
getting
You lost by
fired.
one goal in extra time. I mean,
No,
geez.
no, no, yeah, no. I'm not talking about in terms of him getting fired. I'm talking about in terms of like if another club comes in and like
this is the bit he's been doing all year with Mims and Harks, saying they're going to MLS teams, random MLS teams.
I'm all about if we're going to talk about player progression, you should talk about coach progression as well.
Yeah.
So it's we should talk about that. I mean, if we're done talking about the game, I think that is interesting.
Of course.
So I think the issue is going from a USL League One or USL Championship team and going to Major League Soccer is that you probably need at least some experience in a Major League Soccer technical staff, whether it's as having been an assistant coach or as like a technical director, a sporting director, like what Tab Ramos did, for example. Claudio Reyna did rather with NYCFC for a little while, right? Something like that, because the structure of MLS is so complex, and understanding all the roster rules, like quite frankly, running a USL team has to be so much easier than worrying about all. You have your roster budget, right? Like your owner says, here's how much you're allowed to spend, and don't go over this, and come to me for transfers or whatever, for the modest ones that we've had. But when you go to Major League Soccer and you have all these crazy roster rules and all these 3-letter acronyms for the amount of money you're allowed to spend, it's way different, and it's going to be much harder. It's one of the reasons why when great European managers come over here, a lot of times they struggle because they're not used to saying, I can't just pay a guy $1 million. I need to get targeted allocation money and all this other stuff.
Right.
Well, look at Miami.
Yeah. You break all the rules, and you will get fined $3 million or something like that, right? That's the wage budget for a team for a year, excluding DPs, right? So it's so I think it's a little bit harder than you might think. That being said, like would a deeper pocketed championship team want one of those guys? Maybe.
Yeah. Look, I can think of one team in South Carolina that can use Harks right now, and I can think
it ain't Greenville.
I'm talking about Charleston, and I'm thinking about maybe a couple of teams out west that can use Jay Mims' help. Just putting that out there.
Well, I think that's the most interesting part of that conversation. Again, we all know we don't have pro rel in the United States. We're aware of that. But I think, like, if you're a top-level coach at a USL 1 team, why would you want to go to, like, a bottom-half USLC team?
So I don't have to deal with you anymore. This
is
more to serve my personal interest.
Well, it's like, unless they're going to pay you like a lot more, which they might not even do that, but it's like, I don't have the money to go keep up with the Phoenixes and the Louisvilles and Tampas of the world. The expectations are a lot higher. It's a lot harder league. I'd rather just be in League One and like win. And I'm going to wait for one of those like top 7-8 jobs in USLC to open up, and hopefully they call my number. Like, who the hell wants to coach at Loudoun? Who wants to coach at Monterey Bay? Like, who wants to coach the Las Vegas Lights? Like, no one.
It sounds like a personal problem. I'm just trying to get you out of League One.
But no, I think it is interesting though, because I think for coaches themselves, the math's a little bit weirder than for players, because obviously for players moving up a division, they're probably getting paid more money. It's more exposure. It's growth potential. For coaches, like it's a job, and it's like you might, at Harks, being a technical director at Greenville and the head coach might be, what he's looking for. And even if they say, hey, we'll pay you $10,000 more to coach in championship, it's like, well, I don't need that headache. I don't need all this extra stuff. I just want to cash my check and retire.
Harks right now is the only coach I say that is prepared to go up to MLS, but will he do it? Probably.
Well, and we've talked about this before. It's an optics thing too. Like, I'm not here to debate who's a better coach. I'm not here to debate who would do better at MLS. But if you're an MLS team and you hear, hey, so we've hired Jay Mims. He's a guy who never played professionally in a top flight league. He's coached a League One team 3 years, and he's our new head coach. You're probably going to say, like, what the hell are you guys doing over there? Like, instantly you're going to piss people off. Hark's at least like, hey,
That's
we hired
illegal.
Harks. He's a national team player, former national team captain, awesome guy, played professionally. It's like, yeah, that's the guy. That's the guy. Like, people would be excited about that. And, maybe J-Bim is the better coach, but you're going to piss off a lot of fans finding it out. I think for MLS, what is it MLS about? Protecting ownership's value in their investments.
Well,
It
that's
was
what it's
still
about.
blow my mind that DC United did not wait to the end of the year to just do the right thing and be like, we're going to bring Harks in. And you would have got an instant success. But instead, we bring back Wayne Rooney and take the entire thing.
Well, yeah, and Harks is interesting for DC too, right? Because he's club legend and stuff as well, right? Like, look, I was at RFK Stadium for MLS Cups back in the 1990s, so I remember seeing Harks play in the midfield there. But the I think I guess one of the questions is for a coach: would you be willing, like if you're Jay Mims, for example, and you have aspirations of coaching in Major League Soccer, would you be willing to go as an assistant coach somewhere first for a couple of years, right? Learn the systems, or maybe be a technical director, or like the head of the academy for like the U19s, or coach MLS Next Pro, right? Which is technically the same level as what you're doing now according to US Soccer, but are basically reserve teams and not necessarily trying to win, right? That's trying.
He actually came from Real Monarchs.
Yeah, he came from the Monarchs. Yeah, no, he came from there. Yeah, so, but but he was in the academy system, if memory serves, right? He wasn't in the.
He coached a few games for Monarchs when there were some coach suspensions, and I think they fired their coach, but not like anything consistently.
Right, but he didn't help with roster builds, right? And I think that's what was my point in Major League Soccer versus League One or Championship, is just your roster build has to be much different. And
you're really trying to get that blood out of a rock.
Yeah.
Because there are all sorts of weird, wonky levers you can pull to do stuff and get better and better players. And I've said this about League One a couple of times, our championship more. It's like, how crazy it would be if like Warren Buffett's like, you know what? I'm going to buy Omaha. Here's $500 million. Just like go nuts. We're gonna create a Galacticos on the plane. Like, we're gonna do all this stuff because there are no rules. As long as you stay under the national player cap or international player cap, you're good. But even then, I can buy more international spots.
Yeah,
like you can go to a team and be like, here's $10 million for all of your international slots. They're probably gonna be like, yeah, okay, we'll take that. Give me that.
Not even $10 million. Here's 100,000. Give us 5. Bet. There you go. So yeah, we can have that whole other conversation about coaches.
Darren, you should drop in the chat, and we won't share how much you guys paid for that international slot this year.
Yeah, would be interesting to know. But another interesting thing, we'll move on before we talk about the semifinals. Guys, we got to talk about this USL all league first team and second team. So I'm going to go through the list, starting off with the first team, and we can discuss whether or not we think who should be in and who should be out. So up top is your forwards. You have Grant McCauliffe from North Carolina FC. You have Emiliano Terzaghi from Richmond. You have Jonathan Bolaños from Richmond. He's your midfielder. You have Jose Carrera Garcia from Chattanooga Red Wolves. Omar Cease from Charlotte Independence. JP Sears from Union Omaha. Jalen Crisler from Richmond Kickers. Evan Lee from Greenville Triumph. Daniel Navarro from Chattanooga Red Wolves. Arthur Rodriguez from NOCO. And Rashid Nuhu rounding out the team from Union Omaha as the goalkeeper. Guys, talk about the first team. Did he get everyone right, or do you think there's some omissions there?
I'm not sure why Omar Sis is in the first team.
Yeah, it's hard because like if taking the 24, I can see, or the 22 rather. But there's some guys on the second team that I would probably think might be a little bit better than the first team. And yeah, I agree. Like,
yeah, and I think we were kind of talking offline before this about like McLaughlin, where it's like, do I think McLaughlin's necessarily like one of the two best strikers in the league? No, but he had 14 goals, and so it's like, well, sure, why not? It makes sense. I can see why you did it, but for assists, it's like he had 3 goals and 2 assists, and like he had a hat trick in the last game. So it's like he didn't really even have 3 goals across 3 games. He had 3 goals in 1 game that was a complete blowout. So it's like,
I feel like the league. I want to say my thoughts for him. I'm going to say my thoughts. The only person I have a weird question about is Omar Assis from Charlotte Pitters. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it. All league selection, but first team kind of feels kind of weird given Miguel Ibarra has 3 goals, 7 assists in 7 games. You could have looked at someone like Ethan Bryant, Neil Vignoles, Victor Flag from Central Valley Fuego, which, oddly enough, I am shocked that a Central Valley Fuego got a vote in the all-league team, first or second team, or for an individual player award. Cheney, nothing, nobody. I'm very shocked by that.
Yeah, I just want to say something about McLaughlin, and admittedly, I only watched a couple of NCFC games because by the time I started watching the league, it was pretty clear where they were going to be in the standings. But it like I think just as far as he had a kind of a career season in a way, maybe. Whereas someone like Sterling, I think, was probably more impactful for his team this year. Because think about was North Carolina FC going to be that much worse without McLaughlin? Could South Georgia have made the playoffs without Sterling? I don't think so.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
So I think in terms of importance, I would say that Sterling was probably more important to South Georgia than McLaughlin probably was to North Carolina, at least in terms of like where they wound up in the standings. But you also you want to say when a guy scores 14 goals, and I think that was the second most in the league, right? Like he's gonna make one of these 2 teams for sure.
Yeah, yes, yes. So we move on to the second team, and this is where the controversy comes into for me. Not with this individual name, but you'll figure it out. Starting off with the forward line, we got Ivan Apara and Keziah Starling starting at top. Your midfield, you have Gabriel Cabral from South Georgia Tormenta. You have Mo Espinoza from Chattanooga Red Wolves. You have Gabriel Ovington in the midfield. You have Luis Perez from FC Tucson. Jake Dillinger from South Georgia Tormenta. Brandon Fickey from Triumph, which, funny enough, I think he's the only player to be in the USL Team of the Year, first or second, 4 years in a row now, which is kind of impressive. Mikey Maldonado from Fort Madison, Timmy Mel from Chattanooga Rebels, and Akira Fitzgerald gets into the all-league second team as well. So, guys, second team, I got to ask, how did Overton make it? How did Michigan not make it? How did you not get a sniff? And how did Cheney not get a sniff?
Well, I think we talked about this too, where it's like, of all the Charlotte players to pick, you didn't pick like the guy.
Right.
So I think we all had, last week we were talking about people who are like a deadlock for the first team. And I think we said Bolaños, Terzaghi, and Buyu. And we're like, after that, and Rogers. And it's like, after that, it's like, you could really make an argument for anybody, but those 4 are kind of like the ones that were like, you kind of got to have all 4 of those guys in that first team. And Buyu doesn't make any of them. And you pick 2 guys that he's light years better than at the same position over him. It's like, what are you doing?
It's weird. Because in the years past, and if you go back and look at when they've done the league, I know this doesn't really matter, but they've done a 4-3-3. This year they decided to do a 4-4-2, and they kind of like pigeonhole themselves in it because they're like, oh snap, we can't put in a third forward.
Well, the forwards have not been great this year. No, at the midpoint in the year we talked about that because USL Tactics did their goals above replacements data for us, and you have to scroll down really, really far to see forwards because the midfields and the defenses this year have just really been the shining stars. Brandon, who's not here tonight, League One Reviews, written a couple articles about it where you don't have a lot of that cross play. It's a lot of counteracting play and a lot of set piece scoring this year in the league. And you kind of see that in the numbers for goalkeepers. So I think doing a 4-4-2 is probably the best option if you're picking an all-league team, just because the forwards this year were not great. I mean, outside of Terzaghi, guys did well, but even Terzaghi, it's like he's the only one that's like super, super good.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I want to say another admission that probably doesn't get talked about is Paul Christensen from Greenville. But it's kind of hard to overcome Nuhu and Akira this year. It's kind of like the debate we had back in 2020 about Dallas J, Akira, and
Right.
Nuhu. It's kind of like that same conversation.
Well, and you had who's the Chattanooga keeper that year too, right? He was really good. Kept him in a lot of games.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and then of course Edjamadu out in Tucson as well. That year too.
So can we talk about like the most useless postseason award that USL League One gives out?
Before we do, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Which of these two teams, if they were to play, say, in an all-star game against each other or an all-league game against each other, which one of these two teams wins and why?
Oh, the first team.
You think?
Oh, the first team. The first team is a lot more flexible. I give it to the first team because I don't see Gabriel play any kind of defense in the middle of that midfield, and I can see Jose and Omar C's running circles around him, and he's just like, I'm not defending.
I could see the second team though scoring 5 goals. Right? I mean, just that front 5, I think, could have a lot of great chemistry together because, with Perez, is I think a little bit underrated. Like he was on a bad team, right? So you can't, but he was really good on a bad team. And Espinoza can do things in the midfield that, he's more of a real creative, hold the ball, ping the ball, outside, and. And I could see, like, more passes between. I noticed that both Dengler and Sterling are on here, right? Guys we talked about in that, Tormenta quarterfinal. So, I don't know. I think it would be much closer than you might think.
Mm-hmm. So well, I think Perez for sure is a guy that every League One team is going to be calling his agent for like, sup?
Oh yeah, 100%. And now they're closed down. Oh yeah, hey, what you want?
Yeah. But I also wouldn't be surprised to see him go up to championship on a free. So it's like, who knows? Yeah, but the most worthless. I was talking about with the guys from League One on the Rocks today, Brian and Rich. Why do we even have the Keeper of the Year award? We have the Golden Glove, which is the best statistic goalkeeper, and then we have the first team goalie, which is the best goalie in the league. Like, what's the point of having the goalie of the year? And it's like, well, it's gonna. If it's not Nuhu, it's like, well, what was our voting process? Because he had the best statistics and then he was the best goalie for the team. So it's like
because of 2021.
Well, and on top of it,
literally created an award just for that.
And on top of it, they nominated 5 guys. So it's like half the starting goalkeepers in the league made the list. So it's like, and so even if it's like a contract, I said, well, maybe it's a contract thing, and these guys have in their contract, if they make an all-league team, get an award, or nominated for an award, they get a bonus. So they do it so guys can get bonuses. But even then, like if half the goalkeepers are going to get the team of the year, it's like, well, they're probably not giving you much of a bonus for that. You're probably getting a cup of soup and a ham sandwich. Like, why would you give someone like a lot of money when it's like, well, it's a coin flip if you get it or not? But
yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, we'll take a break and talk about awards. We'll go back to the awards. Just came out today was like the goalkeeper of the year, coach of the year. We'll talk about that near the end of the show. But we'll move on to our previews of the semifinals matchup, where we got some good matchups coming up. So Saturday, 6 o'clock is that 6:30 normal time here. 6 o'clock on Saturday, Richmond takes on Chattanooga. And a very good matchup. And then at 7:30, we have Greenville versus Tormenta. Probably, as a guy that started the Henry Derby, I probably want to say probably the best derby in USL League when it's between Greenville and Tormenta, just in terms of how weird these games can be between each other. So let's start off with Richmond versus Chattanooga. Season split. It was an even split between both teams. Um, guys, what are the styles of plays for both teams? How did both teams kind of set up? How are they looking to win this game? And what are the do's and don'ts for them to win this game?
I don't know, Yogi. How does Richmond play?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Chip. Richmond really loves. So I will say this: we have started implementing more possession based into our style of play, where we can't just have that diagonal ping it ball to Bolaños. They've done a lot better job of that. There's a little bit more thoughtfulness when it comes up to possession play. I will say that we still struggle at times with set piece defending. That's how most of our goals have happened this year, but it's not like the initial set piece. It's more so the clearing up of it, kind of like the second ball opportunity that happens, and when body and limbs are just flying all over the place. But outside of that, man, like defensively, this team doesn't give up a lot of good quality shots. A lot of shots you have to find are either low percentage shots where a carry can just easily save it. That's where he set the saves record. So you're not just going to find easy shots on goal. You have to worry about Bolaños and Terzaghi. And the running joke on our River City 93 is you can name 9 out of the 11 spots on the field. The only 2 spots you got to worry about is maybe left back, where it's like, do you want to go more defensive or more attacking? And right wing is, do you want a guy who's better on the ball with his feet, or do you want a guy that exploits plays? That's pretty much it. The rest of the team kind of pretty much names itself, which is weird to be as a Richmond Kickers fan, because I haven't been used to that.
Well, not only that, but I think you have the luxury of not only having the best striker in the league by a lot. Like, he's a guy that if the ball's at his feet in the box, you're like, that's going in. That is going in. We're going to score a goal. But you also have Bolaños, who gives him great service, and they're just a great team. Like, Richmond is just top to bottom a really good team, and they can do something that a lot of league can't this year, and that's score consistently. And I think that's really the big thing that is going to be kind of the tail of the tape for this game is we know Richmond can score, and we know Chattanooga gets frustrated against good defenses, and Richmond has a really good defense.
Yeah.
And so, Galindres has some magic that he might be pulling out, but I don't know. Like, if I'm Richmond, if I'm a Richmond fan, I'm feeling pretty good going into this game.
Yeah, I think if just if we think about keys of the match, kind of things, the way that South Georgia beat the Red Wolves late in the season. I don't remember if it was the last weekend or the second last weekend, but
last weekend.
It was the last weekend. Yeah, that was the 2-0 win, right? What Tormenta did really well was they made sure that Mensingen couldn't get on the ball, right? And I think that Richmond needs to do the same thing, because let's face it, if Mensingen gets on the ball, we know what he can do. I mean, he did it last week. So you have to shut him down and almost, I'm not going to say necessarily man mark him, but have a plan on how you're going to shut down Rafa in space and not let him get ahead of steam. So I think that's going to be the key for Richmond against Chattanooga. And I think for Chattanooga, like Chip, like you said, you have to plan on how you're going to shut down Terzaghi. And you probably know that Terzaghi is good for a goal. So then you have to figure out on the other side, how are we going to get that one back? Because we have to assume to start, we're down a goal because Terzaghi's been that good this year.
Mm-hmm. I still think it's crazy that he didn't have more goals with last year with 2 more games, especially with Bolaños being as good as he's gotten. He's like, Terzaghi seems like he's the only guy who's consistently gotten good service this year, all year long.
Well, I mean, it also helps that, like, because, I mean, the running joke started, the running thing at the beginning of the year was, like, Richard's going to go as far as Terzaghi goes, but if Terzaghi is a fire, who's going to be the next guy to step up? And not only have you had Bolaños, you also had Neil Vigneault that had 5 assists. You had Ethan Bright that had 5 assists. You had Matt Bentley that scored 6 goals this year. Only Gordon that scored 3 goals. So you had different guys at different spots of the season be consistent enough to help out with those goals and assists. It really just comes to the fact of, and the crazy thing is, like, Bolaños missed a third of this year. Like, that's crazy to think about when you think about it. It's like
and he still had double-digit assists too, right?
Yeah,
still
set the league record.
Right.
Yeah, set the league record. Missed a third of the season,
Here,
which is crazy.
Hold on. We have a thing called the internet. I can look it up. Hold on a second. So he played 20 games, had 11 assists.
Yeah, crazy.
Not too bad.
No, that's I mean, and an assist every basically every other game. I mean, that's solid, right? That's
right. Pretty solid, pretty good. But I mean, this and Chattanooga is a great team as well. Like, you got Galindras, you got Michigan, you have Bo. You have guys out there that can pretty much create anything out of nothing. And the thing about Chattanooga is like Chattanooga, I feel like matches up so well with Richmond in terms of why we get so frustrated with them is just because they're so physical in the midfield. Like their midfield is very physical. Like they man mark really, really well. So that's something where we were talking about River City 93, where like Zaka Moran is going to have to be key in this game because he's going to be asked to do a lot. Like you just said, like cutting out Michigan's chances or making sure that Chattanooga isn't just able just to counterattack you to death, because that's what they're looking to do. They're looking to counterattack you to death. It's kind of like the oldest race where like Barcelona used to cut you by 1,000 passes. Well, Chattanooga's looking to counterattack you into oblivion by 1,000 cuts. So, yeah, that's kind of how I'm feeling about it. I feel, and talking to the team today, man, I can see it in their face. Like I was like, all right, this team is ready. This team feels a lot different than the team that went out there last year to FC Tucson and lost back-to-back games. The last week of the season ended the playoff matchup.
Well, I think, I think you have a reason to be, right? Like you're going to be in front of a home crowd. You guys pulled in, a sellout crowd for the last game of the season, and so it's going to be an electric atmosphere there. Yeah, you're hosting your first playoff game since when? 2013. Is that
2014.
Right? 2014.
Yeah,
okay, so
8 years. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been a long time since you've hosted a playoff game, right? So I got to imagine that RVA has to be really excited. So if you are the Kickers, you have to be pretty you have to be pretty stoked, but you also can't be overconfident, right? I think that's probably the risk is like, hey, we're going to go out there and we're going to take care of business, but you can't be overconfident because we know Chattanooga's already beaten Richmond this year, and so it's not that it's impossible. So Richmond has to play a game, but what I'm really excited about, and just looking at this, the top 4 seeds are in the semifinals, right?
Yeah.
So as we kind of weed people out, we have to say that not that the cream wasn't going to rise to the top anyway, but that it's probably fair that these 4 teams are vying for the title.
Yeah, most definitely. I want to ask you guys this before we move into the next game. But who do you think is going to be the standout player to watch in this game? For me personally, I put Ethan Bryant. If you watch him over the last 10 games, his form has really gone up to a whole different level. So much so that he's been put in the Young Player of the Year voting. But I think he's a clear person to watch out for. Who do you guys think you guys got to watch out for?
Do you have an opinion, Chip? Because
I do. Yeah. So I would say it's either Metzingen or Galindras. Like we said, we already know Richmond's a good attacking team. We know they're a good defensive team. We know they have one of, if not the best goalkeepers in the league. And if you're Chattanooga, Metzingen and Galindras, you better hope one of them has a game.
Yeah.
And if they get shut down, they go quiet, who's going to score? They don't really have the guns for it. And I think that's like the interesting thing is if they have a game, Richmond's in, and if they don't, it's probably over.
Yeah. Ira, what about you? You got an opinion on this one?
So I'm going to say if the Red Bulls are going to have a chance, it's got to be Aviles, right? It's got to be, it's going to wind up being um, the Red Bulls goalkeeper. So I think that's kind of the player who has to have his really great game if the Red Bulls are going to have a chance at this, because I do think that Richmond's going to be up for it, and I do think that they're going to get a lot of chances. So on the other side, um, yeah, I mean, on Richmond, it's hard to say anyone except Terzaghi, right? Like, if well, I guess it's player to watch. You could say Bolaños, right? Like, there's too many players almost at Richmond, but I think on the attack, right? If the Richmond's going to win in regulation, it's got to be one of those two guys is going to make some magic happen and gonna probably have to.
Yeah, there we go. All right. It's going to be an interesting game to watch. So we move ahead. We move on to Greenville versus Tormenta, the game that I already said was probably the best overall derby in USL League One, just because of how it felt like every game's mattered at some point of this year. Definitely with the 5-5 game that was odd. So once again, this is a season series that is split. 10 goals in terms of goals favoring Tormenta with the 10. Style of play. How do you guys think both teams kind of match up against each other? Um, I was over here doing a wardrobe change with the scarves and whatnot.
I have a Tormenta scarf on the left and a Greenville scarf on my right shoulder.
He's
So
trying to do a Lee Corso here in a bit.
Right. But in terms of play, guys, Greenville, we know what they do. We know they want to sit back, they want to bunker, they want to frustrate, and they want to get on the break. They want to play the ball. I don't want to say directly up top to Lopovets, but essentially that's what they want to do. Tormenta, a little bit more Spitfire on the attacking side. They want to get Kingsford, Bill Hart, and Sterling involved as early as possible, and they want to rely on that rugged defense. It's really feel like this Tormenta team took an uptick in form once they dropped Hara, who, once again, I had as my goalkeeper of the year, oddly enough. And
I'm on the podcast.
And he got dropped and whatnot, and they have played better ever since. So
they also had a lot of injuries. They had a lot of injuries to their big attacking core.
They did. But I believe he's not a goalkeeper. I wouldn't believe that, Chef. But Greenville Tormenta, what are we taking from the game? What are the biggest do's and don'ts for both sides?
So I think that what Tormenta has to look out for, just tactically thinking about style of play, Tormenta has to figure out how to counter Greenville's counterattack, right? Because Greenville always has this really fast build up. It's not always long balls either, right? But it's really quick build up through the midfield and then attacking going reasonably direct. Whereas South Georgia, on the other hand, likes to keep the ball a little bit, which kind of plays into Greenville's hand. So I'm a little bit, it was nice that Darren was on the podcast. Darren Van Tassel was actually listening in on our stream here, but I'd love to see two new teams in the finals this year for the league. So I'm kind of, even though I think that Greenville is a really good team, I'd really like Tormenta to win. But I do think that this game kind of plays into Greenville's hands a little bit here, just because of the way the two teams have liked to play this year, where, South Georgia is going to be away. They're going to, try to, possess the ball and move the ball forward, and Greenville is going to just let them do that and then counter quickly. So I think, so I actually give this a little bit to Greenville, because I think it's easier for them to bunker and play their game than it's going to be for Tormenta to break down Greenville's defense.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, because I would say you are letting Greenville play their game, but they're also letting Tormenta do theirs, and Tormenta has been very successful at Greenville. Greenville has not beaten Tormenta since 2019.
Yeah.
I'd say when we had our pre-playoff podcast, we were talking about how Tormenta and Charlotte were like the two hottest teams coming in, and I think the biggest thing that goes against Greenville is I'll say it. I think Tormenta probably has the best center back pairing in the league, with Phelps and Degler in the back.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think that's really what's brought Tormenta this far, quite frankly.
Mhm. Not only that, but they have a lot of guys on offense that can kill you. And that's the other thing. It's a lot of these teams have like a guy that can score. They have quite a few, and it's going to be a multifaceted attack going at Greenville. They've proven that they can beat this team. They've shown that they can beat this team. And of course, playoffs are a different beast. Greenville's been there multiple times every year. They've been in the final every year. So they have that playoff experience and everything else. But I don't know. I really want to pick Tormenta just because I think Tormenta, we all agree, Tormenta is like the feel good story of USL. They're this scrappy little team they do everything right. They build their own stadium. They have a men's side. They have an academy. They have a women's academy. They have a women's team. Like they do everything right. And it would be nice to see them kind of get some flowers and make the finals, especially over Greenville, who's kind of like the Death Star of League One.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And Andor comes out tomorrow, right? So, but I think I think you're right, spot on, Chip. And at the end of the day, though, it's just hard for me to think that Harks isn't going to is going to kind of let his guys go. And interestingly, I was just looking at some of the stats here. I didn't realize that Greenville scored as many goals as they had.
Mostly Labovitz, who then just the Cannons went quiet halfway through the year.
Yeah, maybe that's why, because I only started, like I said, I basically started watching in mid-July, and it didn't seem like they were creating a lot. But
yeah, Labovitz literally like went on a milk carton. Like he didn't play, he didn't score, he didn't do anything. It's like he was like a fever dream. It was like, oh yeah, they had that guy with the long last name who scored a lot, and then it's just like they did. It's like, I guess.
Yeah.
But
and South Georgia is good away from home, right? Like we can't.
That's
we
the
can't
way
they're the best road team in USL League One.
They're the inverse Richmond from last year.
Yeah, pretty much.
They want to be on the road.
And Greenville, and another thing, Greenville has not been in great form, right?
No, they haven't.
Both Richmond and Greenville, and that's like why it's so crazy that Omaha, despite being 10th in the league in points per last 6 games, was still able to like almost get second in the league because no one else wanted it. Richmond kind of had some struggling form. Greenville had some struggling form. Tucson was tearing up the table. Like Tucson wasn't eliminated till like 2 weeks out from the playoffs after being the bottom the entire year. But yeah, I mean, it's been crazy. And I think that's the big thing is, and we'll get to Coach of the Year later, but Tormenta was not in a playoff spot for most of the year, but they buckled down. They got guys healthy. They won the games they were supposed to, and now all of a sudden they're hosting a playoff. They hosted a playoff match last week, and now they're on the cusp of going to USL final after being the worst independent team in the league besides North Carolina last year, who I wouldn't even count North Carolina last year as like the worst team just because they didn't try to play.
Yeah. Well, and if you think about that, I was talking earlier in the show about or actually it may have been before we actually went on the show about the challenges of building a whole new team altogether. And when you look at the South Georgia team, most of the starters were signed at the beginning of this season. So it is a relatively new team. It's not like there were a piece or two, and maybe that's just goes to how the roster was able to be developed, because besides there's only 3 guys on the roster that I remember from last season. In the starting lineup, I should say. So.
Oh man, I don't know who to pick for this game, man. I don't know. It's an even matchup. It's a very even matchup.
It's hard, and that's good because it should mean it's hopefully an exciting game. But if we say it's an exciting game, it's going to be like a 5-0 blowout in one direction. So maybe let's not.
I just want a 5-5 game all over again. That's what I want. I want that.
Did you see that one, Ira?
I did. So I watched it afterward. I didn't watch it live, so that was crazy.
Yeah, I was being bougie, and I was at a wine tasting and my phone just starts like blowing up.
Blowing
What
up,
the
yeah,
hell is happening?
exactly.
It's like, oh, I have goal alerts on for this game. Now there's 10 goals.
Yeah,
Right.
Fought Mob sometimes just goes crazy. So
That's what I want. I want that again. But
it's not going to happen. It's a Greenville game.
it's
Yeah.
not.
Well, how great would that be for the brand of USL One? It's
Yeah,
like
it would
a
be good.
5-5 barn burner.
It would
Or
be.
five-
It will fit
5-5
the
barn
culture of this
burner
season,
going
which
to
has been
extra time.
stupid and crazy.
Has Greenville scored 5 goals in a single game at all this year?
Yeah, the 5-5 game
The
against
5-5
Tormented.
game. Other than that, yeah.
Charlotte
No, I
got
don't think
5 versus North Carolina in the final week of the season, correct? It was 5-2.
No. Did Greenville, other than that game, did Greenville score
don't
5
think
goals in any
so.
other game?
No.
I mean, not that 5-goal games happen that often anyway. They don't. But.
I mean,
But
I
I-
think
but I
their
know
highest
Charlotte
scoring
lost by
game
5
outside of
goals
that
last
one
year.
was a 3-1 over North Carolina.
They got 5 goals scored on him versus Chattanooga Red Wolves.
Yeah, that was something. I don't know, man. If Tormented scores first and it's early, it's going to throw Greenville off. Like, it could really turn into that Union Omaha game, the championship game last year, where Union Omaha scored early and it was kind of just like, all right.
Well, but that's like the thing about Greenville is everyone in the league knows how to beat Greenville. But can you do it?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, yeah, score on us, and then, you are probably going to win, but you have to score on us first. And it's like,
Right. So I don't know, man. I'm favoring Tormenta, but that can change over the course of time. But right now, I'm favoring Tormenta.
Yogi's just going to put 2 tweets up, one saying I picked Tormenta, and then the other one being I picked
yeah,
Greenville,
probably so.
And then he's just going to quickly go and delete the other one.
Game, man.
Delete the other one.
Oh, I forgot about this game. I just sorry. I'm just looking at Greenville's record. They lost 5-1 to Chattanooga. I forgot about that game.
Yeah.
I did watch it. It was another one I watched kind of on delay, but
yeah, that's another team with some weird results is Chattanooga because they had that 5-1 game. Then there's a 7-1 game over Charlotte. It's weird. I swear, a lot of results this year have been weird. Players to watch in this game, y'all. Who are some guys that the fans should be watching out for? For me personally, I'm gonna put Bill Hart. I think Bill Hart is going to be key to this game and how Tormenta goes. If he gets going, I think it's going to be because Greenville's attention is always going to be on Sterling and Kingsford. But if Bill Hart starts going and that's the third person, it's going to be difficult. But what about y'all? Who's the person to watch out for in this game?
So I think it's Heckenberg kind of playing in a defensive midfield position because he's the guy who's going to have to stop the Greenville counterattacks. Because if the counterattacks wind up getting any momentum, then as good as Phelps and Dengler are, I'm not sure they're going to be able to stop some of the Greenville attack, right? I mean, the Greenville's good at the counter, so the counters has to be stopped early, and that has to be stopped by in the midfield. It can't be you can't rely on your center backs all the time to just put out fire after fire. That's just waiting for disaster.
Yeah. What about you, Chip?
Got to go with Dengler and Phelps.
Okay.
That's gonna be the key. We know that Greenville's going to defend. We know that Tormenta is going to attack. But can that center back pairing hold?
Yeah.
And that's the big thing is they got to, because that's one of those things where all of a sudden things are going great. 5 seconds later, Greenville picking the ball out of the back of your net. So those are the guys that are going to have to stop that, and that's a tough task.
Will be a tough task. Will be
because they can get vertical really, really, really quick, and it's scary.
It is. So it's going to be interesting. It is going to be interesting. So we go ahead. We're closing out with the individual player awards that were announced today. So started off with Goalkeeper of the Year finalists. The winner of this award will be announced on Monday on Halloween. So you got Paul Christensen, Karen Fitzgerald, Rashid Nuhu. Defender of the Year is going to be announced on Tuesday, November 1st. You got Jalen Cresser, Daniel Navarro, Arthur Rodriguez. For Young Player of the Year finalists, which is going to be announced on Wednesday, you have Ethan Bryant, Omar Sis, and Ryan Jimba. Comeback Player of the Year, which is this a new award?
Well, it's got to be, right. There was no one to come back from like 2 years ago.
Right.
Well, even this year, it's like half of them. It's like they were out for a little bit this year.
Yeah. Comeback Player of the Year that will be announced on. Oh crap! I was crazy with it. That will be announced on November 2nd. You got Aiden Bellhart, Daniel Navarro, Nathan Schultz. Coach of the Year, Ian Cameron, Darren Sawatsky, Jimmy Weekly. That'll be announced on Thursday, November 3rd. So on our show, we'll know who'll be the Coach of the Year. And then Most Valuable Player will be announced on Friday, 2 days before the finals, which will take place November 6th. You got Jonathan Bolaños, Emiliano Terzaghi, and Arthur Rogers. So, guys, I just went through the whole list. Are there any that sticks out to you as this is a must-win or any surprise omissions?
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Richmond will win the Most Valuable Player.
There we go.
Or they'll split the vote and Rogers will get it.
I did.
You know, we actually talked about today at the press conference. We were like, what happens if there's a split vote? Can it be co-MVPs or they split it so much that Rogers ends up winning it? But I think it's going to be Bolaños. I think Bolaños gets MVP.
Yeah, Bolaños has to be the MVP because he created so many chances, in his limited games, right? We already talked about the fact that he missed like a third of the season. And, those 11 assists were obviously key to getting Richmond to the semifinals. Terzaghi's going to win the Golden Boot anyway, but and how could you have quite frankly, the most valuable player not be in the semifinal?
Not be in the playoffs.
In the playoffs at all, right?
Yeah, it is funny because I don't think putting Rogers in there is necessarily wrong, but just reading the copy, it's really funny. They're like, just the third defender ever. It's like the league's been around for 4 years. That's right. One defender per year. Like, this isn't crazy. In fairness, I think last year's Dami, I'm trying to think who the other one was.
Connor Antley. But the thing is that all been attacking left backs that truly were wingers.
Right. So it's like
not like it's been like a center back or something. It's been like a winger that has had like this crazy amount of assists, and they were like, we gotta put him in MVP.
Yeah, and a guy like Antley I think he also had like 5 goals or something too, right?
Yeah,
right. And he was clearly like going to the next level. So it's like, well, we look kind of silly not having him in the MVP when he's like for sure going to championship next year.
Yeah,
right. You could argue someone like a Dangler or Phelps might have been more important to South Georgia than Rogers was for NOCO, right? At least I would.
Yeah.
But it's hard because both of them were important, right? It's not maybe.
It's not one or the other.
Mm-hmm. I think the big one is Coach of the Year. I think, in fairness, like last year, I said that Perlman should have won Coach of the Year because that team was absolute literal dog shit, bottom, second to last in table, and he brought them up to the semifinals. And then he didn't win, and Mims which was probably the best for the internet for the Omaha coach to win. So we didn't have to hear all the Omaha fans complaining about Mims getting robbed. But Darren brought back his whole team, which in fairness, like they were 5th place last year, so that's a big deal. Weekly took over a Chattanooga team halfway through the season who was a little out of the playoffs, but I don't know. I think it's a little bit tighter, than last year, but it's kind of like I feel like even Cameron did the best job.
But you already know who they're going to give it to.
Darren.
No, they're going to give it to Ian.
Oh yeah, they better. Yeah, but
they're going to give it to Ian because Darren hasn't won a Coach of the Month award since 2020. Since his first year here in Richmond, he hasn't won one since then. And Ian's already won 2 this year alone.
Yeah, and when and at this level, like we were talking about before, you also have significant amount of say in the player signings and stuff. It's not like you have a massive front office staff doing all the scouting and everything. So I think given that it was almost a complete rebuild of South Georgia, I think you have to give it to Ian.
Yeah.
Darren did a good job, and I think that these are probably the three most worthy coaches who were nominated. But Ian Cameron is, I think, the most deserving, regardless of what happens this weekend in the semifinals.
I think for Coach of the Year, I think it's the one where it's like the most obvious, but also the one that they're most likely to mess up somehow.
Yeah, because I'll end up giving it to Darren because Richmond was top of the table, right?
We'll get
Which
to
would
Darren
be
because
undeserving, but it would be like it would be wild. Like it would be wild if they gave it to him because they haven't nominated him for Coach of the Month. Because it's like every time Derek could have won the award, another coach had like a crazy month. Like FC Tucson September had like this amazing month where Derek could have won.
Omaha's August.
Yeah, Omaha's August.
Madison's beginning of the year. Like,
yeah.
And just kind of looking at these young player, I will say it's nice that we don't have the MLS teams anymore because it's like actual like dudes on teams that are good that like made a difference, as opposed to like some random dude on Fort Lauderdale that it's like, who's that? Because you stop paying attention to them halfway through the season because they didn't do anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Young Player of the Year is an interesting award because Ryan Jibba, I forgot he was a young player, but he did a good job for you, Omaha.
Yeah, he's a JUCO guy, so he did graduate JUCO at pro.
Yeah, in overseas. Like,
where did he play? I've seen him play, but I can't say.
So he is from Salt Lake, and apparently Jay's had his eye on him since he was out at Real Monarchs.
I just realized he was in Chattanooga's system because he played in Park City Red Wolves.
Mm-hmm.
So he was in Chattanooga's system, and they lost to the Union Omaha. Wow.
Who'd you rather play for?
Yeah, this is also true. Yeah.
And I think Mims had known about. He was a known quantity to Mims. I'm probably going to mess up the story, but I think they wanted to bring him in the first year, but they thought he needed a little bit more polish. And obviously we had Dami from another JUCO guy from Iowa Western across the river, who obviously is moved on to bigger and better things. And it'll be interesting to see what happens to him this offseason.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, between that and Defender of the Year with Jalen, Daniel, and Arthur, I think Young Player of the Year and Defender of the Year are probably the two that it could go either way, and I don't think I would be mad.
I don't know. If you're nominated for the MVP and you don't win the Defender of the Year, and you're like, feels like you've already tipped your hand.
Yeah, probably so.
In fairness, I'm not really sure how they even vote on this.
So it's the executives, and so it's make sure I got it right. It was done by the team technical staff and executives. So 22.
Is it in the top of the article? And I just completely missed it.
Yeah.
I was just gearing up my hot takes. I wasn't reading the fine print, but
guys, any last things before we wrap up the show?
It's great to be back on.
It's always great to have you on, Ira. We love having you on. We know you got everything going on with Real Central New Jersey, who
we're real Central New Jersey.
I mean, real Central New Jersey.
There's actually legislation in the state legislature right now to designate Central Jersey as an actual region within the state. So, we're very excited about that. So.
All right. There we go.
I guess while we have you on here, do you have any League One news as it pertains to Real Central New Jersey?
No, nothing I could divulge. But we're gearing up for our third USL League Two season, and we're still very involved. We're actually joining the USL Academy next year, so we'll have the boys team in the academy and women's team at the Academy Cup in the spring. So we're excited about that with some of our partnerships with youth affiliates, and we're looking at stadium options and things. So building our fan base over here. So we're really excited about what's to come, and working with the league on a couple of other projects as well.
All right. Well, we love to hear it, Aaron. You know, we're always rooting for you and wishing you the best, man. Guys, it's going to be an exciting week of football. Because what you got NWSL final going on,
Finals.
you
Yeah.
got USL Championship quarterfinals
Uh,
going on.
I want to say that's
MLS,
right. Yeah.
yeah, MLS semifinals. You got USL League One semifinals. It's sad that American soccer is slowly starting to come to an end because I'm missing my midweek 10 o'clock games that I can just throw on the TV and enjoy. It's going to be
Well,
weird.
wait. Yeah. Instead, you'll be cutting school in order to watch the World Cup at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever, right?
Oh yeah, by then I'm not teaching class. The kids be on their own by then. They'll figure it out. But yeah, guys. As always, I want to say thank you guys for taking the time of your day, listeners, for watching our show. Because without you, we couldn't do this. Remember, you can reach out to the show anytime you want to on Twitter at Walking90. We will holler at you guys next week, where hopefully I will be celebrating a final. Holler at you guys next week. Be easy. Be safe.